Good evening and welcome to Horror Time. This is another episode of Scary Stories to Fall Asleep to. Before getting into tonight's episode, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. And now, without further ado, tonight's story. Breathy Voices, Depression and Infidelity by Serengeti Gotcha from Reddit/True Scary Stories. I decided to share this after seeing similar stuff happen to other people on here. Back in 2020, I got married to a girl who claimed her family had some spooky paranormal encounters once. While we were dating, we went to an overlook in our city where you could see the city lights below and the moonrise over the Rocky Mountains. It was a beautiful spot and a favorite for talking. One of those nights we were in my car just listening to music when all of a sudden my girlfriend got really quiet and said, "Do you hear that?" I did, but I thought it was something coming from her. It was a heavy breathing sound. What's even weirder is that it didn't go away when the music was turned up and became clearer when we turned it off. It was clear enough and obvious enough that I figured it had to be coming from our car. I rolled down the windows, but it didn't increase the sound at all. Whatever it was coming from inside the car. I put my hand on the handle of the car, but my girlfriend screamed, "No, don't, please, don't go out there." So I just froze and she started crying. We left and I dropped her off at her parents' house 15 minutes later. She texted me saying she heard it inside the house too. Later that week she told me that her family had heard this kind of stuff before once, and that it stopped when they asked the pastor to bless their house. Weird, and I didn't know what to think of it, but a year later we got married. On our wedding night, she told me about a dream she had 2 years prior. She saw a large figure in her dream who pointed to a man who she said looked like me from the back. She said in that dream there was a house. She was climbing up the stairs when she saw me with my back turned. That was it. She woke up as I began to turn towards her. During our marriage it was rough. It was as if anything and everything we planned just messed up. COVID took our jobs, depressive episodes, declining health, car accidents, friends suddenly moved away. Things became issues that we had talked about before. It was all things that I thought were fixable, but we eventually moved back to her hometown to be closer to family. During this time I was diagnosed with a form of depression, and my wife was too. It made no sense. I was relatively happy with my life and I loved my wife. Things were tough, but not in a depression-inducing sense. We got a dog and that helped a lot, but then my wife's anxiety and depression spiked. She became a shell of herself. She withdrew from me. I learned at this time that she had 2 schizophrenic family members and her sister struggled with bipolar disorder. I was worried, but my wife promised to see a therapist. I didn't think of it, but my wife requested one that specializes in trauma and schizoid type symptom management. Then, one night we were visiting my family across town. We are in my bedroom I grew up in. In our bed, we were both just talking when we heard the breathing again. This time, we both just froze. I had forgotten about it. She put her hand on mine, and that's when we hear, "Hey." Moderately deep, breathy voice coming from the ceiling. We both sat straight up, and both of us looked in the same direction. We saw nothing. We both heard it. We got out of bed and went to the living room, where my mother was still watching TV. She saw something was wrong and asked us what happened. My wife looked at me and I looked at her, and just said, "Mom, we heard something." Somebody said, "Hey." I tried mimicking the voice and my mother's eyes widened. She looked at my wife who nodded in agreement. My mom didn't answer either, suggesting it was probably the TV, but that's not possible. The TV was too low and the sound was coming from the ceiling, not the door. The next day we took family photos, and during the photo shoot my wife started crying. When I asked her what was going on, I pulled her close and told her everything was going to be fine. Sometimes anxiety symptoms caused her to cry. That's when she told me that she had a dream of this house, and that when she had that dream, she saw herself dying. This was the house she saw on our wedding night. We went back to our hometown, and our marriage rapidly spun out of control. My wife divorced me. Turns out she had been cheating. It was a tough divorce, but once she left, so did my symptoms of depression and most of my anxiety. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Horror Time. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos. Have a great evening, stay safe, and good night.